Good afternoon and
Jenny,
welcome.
I'll start with you.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Jenny Johnson, and I'm excited about today's webinar because it's the first time in several years that we've had a reliable picture of what we're doing well and where we can enhance our satisfaction with Moss Creek. I say we because our members' participation in this survey was extremely high. And as you will hear from our expert third-party partner, Club Benchmarking, we can be statistically confident that the results truly represent the membership's opinion. Board members have seen the survey results, and I have tasked relevant committees with studying these results and reporting to the board for discussion and action. On behalf of all of us, I would like to thank Jody Rolfe, board member and chair of the Communications Committee, and Susanna Johnston, our interim GM, for heading up this important project. So over to you, Jody.
Thanks, Jenny. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us this late afternoon, early evening. I think you're going to find this really interesting, informative for sure. And I know you're going to have questions, which we will take at the end, and the questions relating to the survey, of course, because that's tonight's topic and subject for discussion. As Jenny just said, we haven't done a survey like this since 2017, and an awful lot of time has passed since then, and we have quite a number of new members certainly joining us since then. So I just want to let you know that the results we're about to hear, as Jenny said, stand on their own. We don't believe that there is a basis of comparison given the amount of time that has passed since the last time we did something like this. And also because of COVID. And because of COVID, I want to say that while these results are true and statistically significant, there is some, as they say in the research industry, noise in the results, we think, because of the COVID factor. We've done the best we can do, our staff has, keeping us busy and active, but nevertheless, we've had to make some accommodations. We'll definitely see in ongoing years, however, some basis of comparison, not only from this year that we can use next year, but in all years going forward. So what I'm saying also is that I'm very happy to tell you that the board has approved funding to do this work every single year from now on. It used to be every 3 years, and that's just too long. Too many things happen in between. Change happens too quickly, and we need to keep our fingers on the pulse of what the membership is interested in and what they're satisfied with, so that we can make adjustments and changes as necessary as quickly and as financially prudently as we possibly can. So we now have the information to help the board and management prioritize elements of our strategic plan and for prudent budgeting. And some of this will actually go into effect this year. And I can tell you that some of it is already in effect, as you will hear from Susanna Johnson later on. We're also going to have a report card each year that's going to grade the overall member experience, as well as the member satisfaction with specific amenities and services. So this is an investment that we think is going to not only pay dividends, but will most likely pay for itself as we continue to improve our life here as members in Moss Creek. So I want to also thank all of you, everyone that participated in the survey and took the extra time to add comments. 4,000 comments, as a matter of fact. And I can assure you that all of them will be read. We know that there are many thoughtful ideas in there. As with our other webinars, this one is being recorded. The link will be posted on the website, as well as a link to a written executive summary of the results. And as I mentioned, we will take questions following the presentation. There's a little panel down at the bottom of your screen where you can type in your question and your name and your address, please. And as they pertain to the survey results, we will get to them as time allows. We will answer all of them, however, even if we have to sign off from this webinar. Now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Mike Morin from Club Benchmarking to tell us what we've learned.
Thank you all. Good afternoon or good evening. Happy to be here. This is one of many presentations I've already done with the board and working with Jody and Susanna. So I'm excited to now be in front of all of you. If you're not familiar with Club Benchmarking, we have been working with Moss Creek for many years on some asset management type things and some capital strategies for capital funding going forward. I oversee all of our survey research that we do at the company. So I do both member and employee engagement surveys. I also do industry-wide research, working with numerous organizations and associations that represent our industry as a whole. And then in general, our company, there's about 25 of us. In a non-COVID year, we are in about probably 6 clubs a week, 6 clubs and communities throughout the industry, constantly traveling and understanding what is unique about them. Every community is unique in its own way, but essentially the way to run that community from a business standpoint is all similar. And that's what we've learned. We capture over 1,000 financials from communities like yourselves every year. And we've learned what the most sustainable model is, but it's really the culture that we understand through the member surveys that make communities like yourself pretty unique. So we love doing this. We love understanding the qualitative and the quantitative information so we can couple it on top of that financial results and then also ultimately create decisions going forward. The number one goal of our company is to start driving decisions based on data and no longer an opinion. As you know, there's so many different perspectives and opinions from all of you within this community that with constant changing of the board of directors, we want to make sure that the decisions and the ultimate direction of the community going forward is based off of a collective data from you all. So when we talk about that, this is just a reminder to talk about where we were and what we did when we started this process. We've been working on the survey for almost about a year. COVID postponed a little bit of our work going forward, but it's been almost a year that we've been working and developing this survey. We finally launched it February 15th and kept it open for about 2 weeks towards the end of February. The total population at the time when we sent out the survey was just under 1,900 members. So that's both individuals within a property. We wanted to capture as much information as possible. And so that was about 1,900 people. From that, we captured 1,166 responses, which gave us a 62% completion rate. Statistically speaking, this is incredibly high and valid, a very small margin of error. So we know that if we even got 200 more responses, things wouldn't change much. We would just get more comments, which is really the color to these. And when we look at the prior survey that was mentioned, we even received 300 more responses this survey compared to the others. So we have a great perspective of how you all feel about the community at this moment, and then using that information again to drive us forward. When we look at the property representation, there's 1,042 properties in Moss Creek. Of that, we received 788 responses from at least one individual within that property. So when we look at the property representation, 76% of the properties are represented in these results, again, with at least one response. Down on the bottom right, on average, it took you about 32 minutes to take the survey, which we do value your time. We know that's quite extensive. But when you have such a great community like yourself, like Moss Creek, that offers so many different amenities and services, it's tough to shorten that because we really wanted a very robust survey that was detailed. So all this to say, we truly appreciate the time that you took for this. We are going to show you, from presenting these results, but also the actions that the club leadership has already taken, that your time and the comments that you provided are valuable and are going to be used. We want to build trust in this system. And so right from the get-go, to get an incredible response rate is really enlightening and tells us that, you want to be involved and we want to hear all your voices. as Jody mentioned, we received just under 5,000 comments, which I have read through all of them. There's a lot of phenomenal comments. I feel like I live within the community, and you'll see when I present these results, I have a collective voice of just under 1,200 of you speaking through me. So I love doing these presentations because I feel like I've lived there for many years. And then on average, about 4 comments a response. The different things that we asked in the survey, again, this is just to give you some context about when we did the survey just over 2 months ago. So importance versus satisfaction, you're going to see why we asked that. Overall satisfaction, which we love getting that hierarchy, overall satisfaction, and then digging deeper into it. The loyalty and attachment, which are going to be some areas that we look on that measure the experience that you have within the community, and something we measure going forward. And then digging into each specific amenity. And then overall qualitative, which are those open-ended comments, and then member demographics. Just to mention at the beginning, so even though the survey was about 32 minutes for you to take it, we tried to incorporate what's called display logic. So if you weren't a golfer, if you don't golf within Moss Creek, you weren't presented those questions. Same for tennis, the marina, and so on. So we tried to create ways to shorten that time, but also as we go through, you'll be able to see that within those specific areas, if you weren't actively using it, you weren't presented those questions. So to kick us off with the demographics about the residents within the community, on the left you see gender. We love seeing equal representation from both male and female. I still receive some results where it's a smaller percentage of female because it's that older culture where it's a men's club, sort of say. So we love seeing equal representation in the results. We also know, not through our research, but other research, that 90% of the real estate purchase is dictated by the female in a relationship, right? So in a gated community, it's incredibly important that we capture both individuals' responses within a property. So incredible to see such an equal response. On the right, you see the tenure. So on average, people have lived within the community for about 11 years. Fairly good distribution. This is pretty consistent where you see about 20% of new residents moving to the community in the last 2 years. And I'm sure you experienced, similar to other communities within your area, a large boom of people moving with COVID, changing lifestyles and whatnot. Then we look at seasonality. So one of the reasons we like to look at seasonality is just to understand how long our members or people are staying or living within the community, making sure that we're not decreasing what our offerings are during those slower periods, because you do have a strong percentage of you that are living there throughout the entire year. You do, so about 79% actually live there year round, and then you can see a small percentage of people or higher percentage of people living there in those subsequent months. So that's why we like to capture that, to make sure, because there are communities where people are, it's maybe only 30% that are year round. So that's one thing that we love to capture. On the right, you look at the age distribution, which is a fairly even bell curve, something that we're fairly similar or used to seeing, average age being 68, which is fairly consistent, again, with communities that we see in your area and throughout the industry. There was other demographics too that we looked at, but these are some of the hierarchy ones. You'll see later on the survey that we did, or in the presentation, we did look at a lot of different results by demographics, and it's endless. We are having fun looking and digging into the different things, understanding how, what certain results came out of it and what the demographics are represented. So we really have endless options or possibilities to look into different makeups or segments within your community. For the activity fee, so 72% of the respondents purchased the activity fee. And then you can see on the bottom left and right what activities. So if you do purchase it, what activities are you participating in? If you don't, based on the a la carte, what activities are you also participating in? So this is a great snapshot. Following up this question, we did ask for those that do purchase the activity fee, do you find value in it? Which just over 94% of people that purchase that activity fee do find value in it. So we're hitting the mark there, but then also, we did look at the differences of people that purchased it versus don't purchase it, and making sure that we're creating that value and that level of experience. So to dig into the survey results. So again, overall satisfaction, we love to do this hierarchy overarching overall satisfaction. One reason being is because then we can do regression analysis and actually see what's influencing this overall satisfaction score. So just a quick housekeeping sort of thing. On the top right, you see a green bar around the strongly agree, and somewhat agree. That's called the top 3 box. When we look at that, if we were to do one called the bottom 3 box, that would be circled around the bottom 3 areas. So strongly disagree, and somewhat disagree. As I go through this presentation, you'll hear me reference the percentage of members that are satisfied versus the percentage of members that are dissatisfied. That is the sum of those 3, or the top 3 box. So 91.19% of the membership are satisfied with their experience at Moss Creek. That's those top 3 numbers equal, or all summed up. And so that's just a bit of housekeeping. The entire survey, except for one question, was on a 1 to 7 Likert scale. So overall satisfaction, you can see here, just 91% of you are satisfied with your overall experience. This is just above the industry average. So we look at both mean scores and also percentages. It's often easier to understand percentages, but so Moss Creek is just over that industry average with a mean score of 5.9, where we have a 5.78 for the industry. Then when we look, again, the difference of demographics, there's a lot on the screen. We do understand that, but this was just to give you an idea of how we looked at all these differences of demographics. So on the top right, or top left, excuse me, you have gender. So the difference between male and female. It's fairly typical that you see males are slightly less satisfied. Generally, they just don't care as much, to be frank, but fairly consistent. But you can see 93%, everything basically over those 90% satisfied, which is truly best in class in our opinion. Anything over 90% satisfaction, you're hitting the mark. It's rare, I think, that we see over 95% for overall satisfaction. On the bottom left, when you look at age, it's fairly typical that you see younger members within a community are less satisfied, often because there's less programming. Usually it's an older community or more retired community, so we don't have the programming there, or we're starting events at 4 o'clock versus 5 when they could still be fully employed. But you see here, fairly consistent that regardless of age, generally people are satisfied with, again, over that 90% satisfaction. It's often that the oldest demographic are less satisfied, mostly because they are unable to use the club as much as they have been able in the past. They may not be able to golf as much, play tennis and whatnot. So their usage is going down a little bit. On the top right, we love looking at the difference of property type. So pretty understandable that the undeveloped property are least satisfied, which there was only 8 of those in the survey, but they're just unable to fully experience being neighbors with you at the moment. But again, there was no difference in satisfaction based on property type. And then when you look at tenure on the bottom right, it's pretty typical that the newest members are the most satisfied, just because it's that kind of honeymoon phase. As tenure starts to grow, it dips a little bit, but this is all something fairly typical that we see. And then, as Jody mentioned earlier, all of this and more will be included in the executive summary. And then this will also be posted online, I believe. So we're happy to dig into this, and you'll be able to further analyze it within those reports. So now we look at attachment. Not many people look or understand truly what attachment is. The CEO of our company was the general manager of a community down in Naples for 20 years. During his tenure there, he got his PhD in determining member loyalty. So he actually built an algorithm for his dissertation and determined member loyalty. So from that, we know that attachment is the missing link between satisfaction and loyalty. And we know there's a difference between being satisfied and being loyal. So these are one of the metrics, or these are some of the metrics we're going to look at as we measure your experiences within the community. The different things we look at is there's emotional attachment, there's physical attachment, there's social attachment. So as you can see here in the top line, that's the entire community that we're looking at. We can see a little bit lower scores with that, having that strong sense of belonging within the community. And then on the bottom one, creating those opportunities for socialization and common experience and backgrounds. As mentioned at the beginning, there could be a little bit of noise. Granted, we had COVID for a year, so that interpersonal and those social opportunities were a little limited. But you can see here, there's room for growth. And then when we look at it, the difference between tenure and age, which those can be exclusive. You can be a younger member and have lived there for more than 5 years. So these are mutually exclusive. You can see it's pretty fascinating that the younger the members are in those both areas, their attachment levels are lower, right? So is that the programming that we're not providing? Is it the ease of access? Is it the dining? And these are all things we're going to talk about and explain. And again, the events, or when are we putting on the appropriate time of events? Do we have the venues or the amenities that they're looking for? It's fascinating to see that both of those are consistent. And then when you look at tenure, those the lower tenured members don't have that level of sense of belonging. Again, that could be COVID related. They didn't get to fully enjoy Moss Creek last year, all the wonderful things you do in the programming. Just in general, as an industry as a whole, coming out of this, we have to have a very robust social programming calendar because people want to be together. People miss that interaction. They miss their friends. They miss their neighbors. There's a ton of great comments. Towards the end, you'll see talking about the warmth of your community, and people are missing that. And so, that's something we're going to want to focus on, is creating some programming around this and making sure that we're growing that sense of attachment, which is ultimately going to influence your level of loyalty. So Net Promoter Score. This is a metric created by Bain & Company, one of the top consulting firms in the world. What they did is, in tens of thousands of surveys that they did, they asked clients of a brand or a company or an employee, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend X to friends and family? And then they asked a number of different questions about that product or brand. What they did is called factor analysis. So when they did a factor analysis, all the responses from the questions about that product created these 3 different areas of detractors, passive, and promoters. And they do that because all of them were aligned. So anybody that answered 0 to 6 on this Net Promoter Score, every other question essentially were answered the same. Same with passive, same with promoter. It's fascinating how this happens. And so that's how they're able to create these 3 different areas. And then what they did is they take the percentage of promoters and subtract it by the percentage of detractors. And that gives you your Net Promoter Score. This is widely used across all industries. So before the pandemic, Delta was the #1 airline with a Net Promoter Score of 45, according to Wall Street Journal. Comcast or Xfinity, it has a 5 Net Promoter Score, right? No one likes dealing with their internet provider. You're on hold at all times. So it's one great metric that determines, again, member loyalty. It is a great snapshot on word of mouth and how likely people are promoted. You all are fairly well traveled. I'm sure your kids are fairly well traveled. So that word of mouth is so incredibly important for how competitive a market you are in, but also getting more people to want to look at Moss Creek. So when we look at Moss Creek's Net Promoter Score, it's right at a 48.45, just above our industry benchmark of 44.85. This is something that we're going to want to improve and get over 50. 50 is a pretty good benchmark to strive for and then grow from there. The ultimate goal is to move those percentage of detractors to passive and then move people from passive to promoters. So you want to shift people from left to right. And we can actually look at reasons why, and we actually know reasons why people selected detractor and passive and promoter. And so those are the things that the club leadership is going to focus on and hopefully start to shift this metric. So to take the next step towards importance versus satisfaction. If you remember, we asked your level of importance and level of satisfaction. They were side by side of all these different areas. On the left, you see, again, that's the importance. On the right, it's the satisfaction. These are in order of quote unquote most important to least and quote unquote most satisfied to least satisfied. You'll see why we asked them. When you're looking at this though, a word of caution is, for instance, tennis being towards the bottom. We know that only 21% of you play tennis. So it is quote unquote less important to the general population within the community, but it doesn't mean that it's less important to the club leadership or less important to our decisions going forward. Same for Marina, the Boswick Point Park the pavilion, all that. Because it just has less usage, only 13% of households have access to the marina right now, because of the quantity of slips and also the dry storage. But because we have smaller percentage of members that can actually use it, doesn't mean that it's less important to club leadership or the community as a whole. So that's just a word of caution. Please don't think that we're saying that. But the reason we're looking at this is because then we graph it. So the y-axis is importance, the x-axis is satisfaction. And then we graph it to see where areas of high importance and low satisfaction. And you can see here on the top left in quadrant one, that's that high importance, low satisfaction. The clubhouse facilities, which we know are outdated and something that members want improved. We'll talk about that when we get to food and beverage. Fitness center and programming, again, another area that's looking for expansion, capacity reasons for that. Dining, overall dining, both areas, clubhouse and Mackey Creek Grill, Boswick Pavilion, people want more there. They think there's a lot of opportunity down there. You get the marina and just expanding down there. Areas in the top right, high satisfaction, high importance. We're really hitting the mark with both of those. Quadrant 3 in the bottom left, lower importance, lower satisfaction. Again, it's that word of caution of knowing that, again, it's not less important to the community as a whole. And then the bottom right, we have higher satisfaction, lower importance from there. So this is just, again, another great snapshot of overarching themes that you'll see come through the survey results. But the ultimate goal is, again, to shift everything from the left to right to push that into those other quadrants. Those blue bars are set by the mean scores of everything else too. So those are all set by the overall averages from the scores provided. So this is just a quick snapshot or scorecard of everything we're about to dig into. So the overall dining experience, the middle column is the percentage of members that are using it. That far right column is the overall satisfaction. So the overall experience, about 99% of you are using the dining at the club. So, at the clubhouse and at Mackey's Creek. So overall dining experience, which is different than the service question. So just under 80% are satisfied with that. When we talk about the service at the clubhouse, 93% are satisfied with that. Mackey Creek, again, just about 93. Overall member events, which we asked about pre-COVID, what your perception was about pre-COVID member events. 72% are actively coming to those events. About 81% are satisfied with them. And then you see golf, 61% actively play golf, 85% satisfied with golf from there. Tennis, I already referenced that, 21% are actively participating in tennis. 93% satisfied with the court conditions and the facilities down there. Marina, 13% of the households have access to that, whether that's dry or wet slips, and the overall satisfaction there. So you get a gist for what we're looking at, but something to take note, and we'll reference it. You can see the percentages of members that are using this. It's interesting that pool is probably the second highest used amenity behind food and beverage, which we consider food and beverage an amenity, and then golf, and then fitness and whatnot. So when we look at, we'll start off with food and beverage. So this is the overall food and beverage experience, thinking about both areas that you have. So 78.9% are satisfied with that. Again, you see that green box being the top box. Moss Creek is just above the industry average in a mean score. So the industry we have is 5.33, Moss Creek's mean score being at a 5.4. So food and beverage is the hardest amenity to get satisfaction in any community, club, yacht club, anything you want to say. But in any community more so, food and beverage is always lower rated. A couple areas that always come out of it: menu variety and menu rotation. Reasons for that is often you would prefer to dine within the walls of your community, right? I'm sure you have lovely restaurants in Hilton Head, but if you can stay within the community, keep everything on one bill, see your friends and family, or see your friends at the clubhouse or Mackey's Creek, majority of people will do that. But it's because you're eating within your walls more often versus going to a restaurant, or maybe you belong to a local golf club at your other household. You frequent those much less. You tend to dine there. So that's why menu variety and rotation often are the lowest. From the comments, we know there's desire for a more casual dining outlet, increased convenience, right? That's the dress code coming in. That's I just want a bar that I can go sit at and watch a game. Would anybody go watch the Masters at the clubhouse or at a football event, right? People want that. And that's across the board. That's not just a younger demographic. Members want ease of access, convenience, and that's the whole goal for a community, is to create that opportunity for you all. Consistent throughout that, the clubhouse dining facility is an area of opportunity, both in aesthetics and creating a more inviting environment. There's a strong desire for outdoor dining. I think the Mackey Creek Grill is going to explode this year. I heard it was open earlier and it's already doing very well, right? And so members want that at the clubhouse as well, that expanded outdoor dining, being outside. This was even before COVID that this was an industry trend, and COVID made this even more so important. Across the board, service staff throughout were very high satisfaction scores. And then again, people love Mackey's Creek. They think there's so much opportunity there and want to expand upon it. When we look at both areas, at the top, this is just overall aspects of food and beverage. On the bottom is the service staff. As mentioned, that menu variety and the rotation is what's coming out to us. The healthier dietary options is a tough one. We need to, as a community and as a restaurant as a whole, be better about that. We can't just put a pasta dish on the menu and hope that that'll suffice for anybody that has dietary issues. And then, going back, some of the things that influence out the menu variety and rotation, healthier options, are the kitchen facilities. It is known that community kitchen facilities are poorly built, right? They are not suitable for the storage and the space that we need to be able to turn that over, the menu over as frequently, because you need extra storage to be able to get in fresh products all the time. So these are all things we know that influences these scores. You see hours of operation being up there. We assume that this happens to be, that has to be with the 2 hours that they were closing the restaurant to be able to turn it over, clean it, and create a safe environment. I believe that that's no longer going to be a practice. They're still going to be cleaning it, but I don't think they will be closing it for that 2 hours. So that was, from the comments, we heard that people were frustrated with that, but we know that's no longer a case. And then you can see down at the bottom right, the service staff, incredible scores and results from that. Everything over 95% across the board, speed of service, menu knowledge, things like that. When we look at Mackey Creek Grill, again, high levels of satisfaction with that service, the food quality, the consistency. We can see here that menu rotation and healthier options are up there. But to be frank, it's really a food truck or a larger food truck, right? You can only have 3 individuals that can staff that. So you are very limited in your options. I think I heard, or I saw through the comments, that online ordering had to be reduced because we just couldn't keep up. But that just shows you the immense interest to be down there on that beautiful property along the water, being outside, and enjoying that al fresco dining and that ease of access. People love that ease of access of just being able to show up. From the comments, people want entertainment down there on Friday nights. They want it expanded. I was sent pictures of what they were able to do with the whole atmosphere down there, and it looks great, but people want more. They just see so much opportunity down there to be able to expand on it and offer more within the menu variety and the options, and hopefully be able to create a venue where you could have online ordering from that. And again, it's service staff received great scores when it is cafeteria style, almost, where you order it and then they call your name and you go back up for it, right? But we're hitting the mark there with the service staff being friendly and creating an environment for you to feel comfortable. And cleanliness was an important one to take away from that. Then we asked, once restrictions are over, what are different things that would entice you to come to both venues? On the left, you have the clubhouse. The right is Mackey Creek Grill. So more menu variety, that better ambience, that's that clubhouse aesthetics, that outdoor dining that's coming through with that value pricing, hours operation. So it's fairly consistent from what we see from those results, that, menu variety, more hours of operation, again, down there, variety with that healthy option. So these are things that we're going to hopefully work on and be able to create more opportunities for you to want to come there instead, increase the likelihood of you choosing to come there and just instead of going to somewhere in Hilton Head. So moving on to golf operations. So the golf shop, we don't have it included in this presentation, but we asked questions about the outside operations staff. across the board, overall 95% satisfaction scores with what they're providing, clubs being clean, carts, friendliness, attentiveness when you arrive. So great scores on that. When we look at the service staff within the golf shop, 92% satisfied with their service. We can see within the merchandise selection, both I think men and women are fairly happy with the selection. I believe females are a little less satisfied with the pricing. We need to be cognizant on sizing and things like that. But people are proud to wear Moss Creek, that logo. So we need to make sure that we're creating opportunities for them to be able to, create that loyalty, that net promoter score and share that. And then other things, pace of play. It's great to see that score being fairly consistent with what we see in the industry. We heard so many times this prior year that rounds are up. We know that rounds are up about 20% across the board. We know that that isn't going to sustain going into the next year from studies by National Golf Foundation, but it's great to see that pace of play stayed consistent, and people are happy with that. In general, everybody's just excited for COVID to go away. We want full swing. People want events back. They want to do the mix and mingles and things like that. So people are just really looking forward to things to hopefully loosen up. When we look at both courses, so on the left, you see North Course, right, South Course. These are scores that are a little lower than what we like to see. Typically, we see things over that 90%, which is something, especially with the highly competitive market that you're in. But we know from this, from the comments, we know that there's inconsistency on the tee boxes, some inconsistency with fairways, some rough, some greens, making sure things are level. But I believe the community's already being proactive that with the new sprinkler system coming in. There was also probably increased wear from single cart use during COVID, more carts going on the course than expected, probably in different areas than they expected, as well as the sprinkler system being outdated. So hopefully with COVID, and we can start to get rid of single cart usage, as well as the improvements that are already planned, we'll see these scores go up in the future. But it's something the community and club leadership is already actively working on. So this is something that's just confirming kind of what we already knew. And then down on the bottom right, you look at the differences with driving range, practice range, so the practice facilities, and then the course bathrooms, just making sure that we are creating a clean environment for both individuals throughout the course. So to look at tennis, so 21% of the members are playing tennis. This is pretty consistent across the industry. It's typically about 20 to 30% of members that are active in racket sports, unless you are a tennis facility or a rackets club. It's great to see that the facilities we're providing up on the top left are top notch, right? You see, again, close to 95% satisfied with overall satisfaction, the court conditions, availability, amenities, things like that. Down on the bottom left, often you see programming a little lower, in the high 70s. Often you see programming just because not as much funding can be allocated to that. But you can see here, we're creating a great environment. We received great comments regarding the professional staff, the tournaments, the social events, and things like that. So we're hitting the mark there, and that's just something that we'll want to continuously grow. Tennis has such an important social aspect to that with those programming. So we got to make sure that we're getting back to that when COVID is reduced. Down on the bottom right, pickleball, that's something that we're looking forward to adding over the next year, or sometime in the next year. We asked what percentage you would be interested in learning or playing, and just under 52% are interested in doing that. It's exploding across the industry. It's something that you kind of have to add to stay competitive. I'm waiting for the first millionaire to come out with, or someone to create a quiet pickleball and paddle, and they will become multimillionaires. But it's something that you all are really looking forward to having added to the community. So when we look at the marina, 13% of households have use or are using the either wet storage or dry storage. Overall, good satisfaction scores with in the mid 80s for condition, cleanliness, utilities and lighting. Down on the bottom left is that dry storage, and kind of consistent. The things that came out of this were mostly through the comments. There was frustration around the increasing fees on top of the activity fee. Many want this to be expanded. They feel like there's so much potential and opportunity, which I believe the admin has put in a request to the state authorities to actually expand it. So they're just waiting to hear a response. So again, that's something else that the community has been proactive and they know and they've heard this. So this just reaffirms and gives us validation on what we're actually doing. But there is a request to the state authorities to expand it. Many of you feel that there's so much potential down there, down in that Boswick Point area with the pavilion, the pool, the marina, and all that, and the Mackey's Road. People want something down there. They want that to be somewhat of the hub of the community. And then other things that came out of it was just the wait list being so extensive. There was something miscommunication between maybe a realtor saying, yeah, you can get a wet slip there. And then once they purchase from the community, finding out that there is the wait list. And that's something that the community is aware, or club leadership is aware of, and they're going to work on that messaging and whatnot. Down on the bottom right, you see questions about the kayak and being able to rent those out. Generally, are great results for the condition and the safety. The things that came out of this was some frustration around during COVID, removing the ability to rent life jackets and paddles. And so, and then also that just recognizing or hearing that the condition of the actual kayaks are starting to get a little wear and tear, and the handles are falling off and whatnot, which I believe the community has already purchased new ones, and they're waiting on a few more to arrive. So that's something that they had already planned on purchasing over the winter, and something that should be readily available coming forward. The fitness center. So again, great scores throughout the fitness center. Remember, this is about 50%. So this is the fourth highest used amenity behind dining, pool, golf, and then fitness. In generally, people are living longer, especially within gated communities. You have those blue zones, right? Zones that talk about people that generally live longer, that health, hardy, conscious mindset. When you build gated communities now, the third highest thing that they put in is walking trails. Again, being able to walk in a safe environment. So fitness is incredibly important within gated communities. Overall satisfaction being at 94%. The cleanliness is so incredibly important, even in a non-COVID era. Cleanliness, which 96% are satisfied with that. But the things that came out of this were the classes. I believe the community did increase the number of classes during COVID because capacity was reduced. So they were trying to be proactive and increase the number of classes, knowing that less people could use them. But there definitely is interest or desire to expand on that. And I believe right now they're being held over at the pavilion. So that's a bigger room or classroom to be able to host larger classes, which people are enjoying. But what are we going to do when we have to, allow events going back there? So there seems to be a need to expand the fitness facility. This is consistent not only in the group workout facility rooms, but also with the equipment for stretching or golf programming and things like that. It's often you hear comments within the fitness center saying, well, I go to work out at 1:30 every day and there's no one there. The place is a ghost town. And that's great. But, working out is something that people have done somewhat at the same time, probably throughout their entire life. So we need to make sure that we are aware of the capacity restraints and the bottlenecks when our members are using it. It's less likely for someone to shift times when that's something that's been ingrained in their daily routine. So it shows that there's room or there's interest to expand upon it, especially with the group fitness classes, and creating an environment that's really robust enough for the community that you have and the capacity and the amount of people that are using it. Looking at the Boswick Pool Complex, so great things coming out of this again. So 97% overall pool facility. Again, cleanliness being up there, incredibly important outside of COVID, even in COVID. The things that came out of this were working with the attendants. It's tough, and it's often that most attendants are either college kids or high school kids, people with that seasonal aspect. The comments that came out of this were more enforcement of rules, giving them the authority so they can police and enforce the rules, but then also knowing there's a balance there to have families that need to police their own children, because it can be uncomfortable sometimes for a club employee to have to step forward and ask someone's children to calm down or to stop doing whatever is against the rules. There was also some comments about saying that there should be, one pool should be for the other. and separating them, which I believe under the Federal Fair Housing Act, that's something that you can't do. You're unable to actually segregate the two pools, so it has to be open to both. And then other things that came out of the comments, which is fairly consistent, extending the pool season. So being able to access the pool earlier in the year and then also later in the year. There were some comments about keeping it open later in the evening, which I believe you're unable to. I think when we talked about this earlier at the board level, you have to close the pool 20 minutes after sunset. So, these are some great comments that we're getting. And then this is other things that we're able to respond on and either communicate that or educate the membership on why we're unable to do that, even though we want to. But you can see incredibly high usage, right? 80% of members are actively using the pool, and while it's open, 80% are using the pool on a weekly basis. So this is a hub. This is a place where people want to be and enjoy, and an area where there could be some opportunity to expand it and grow on the offerings down there. So on the left, we're looking at landscaping, trails, and preserves. On the right, we're looking at security. So the things that came out of this, the cleanliness is so incredibly important. We know from our research, one of the top 3 reasons why people purchase within gated communities is the landscaping and the cleanliness of everything, not even just the walking trails, but the roadways, the sidewalks, the common grounds. It's so incredibly important that we're maintaining that. Everything from the gate to people driving by, the second you drive through those gates, you want to have a beautiful property, which we are hitting the mark there, right? 96% are satisfied with the cleanliness of roadways. The general community, you got 94%. The landscaping. There were some comments about the fording island, and that's from the burning, I think, a few years ago, which some people are still, it hasn't fully grown back yet. Other suggestions were adding more trash bins with doggy bags for people with pets. And then we asked some other questions about the Boswick Pavilion, the dog park, and things like that, which we know that were high satisfaction and things that we gleaned from that. The library as well were also things that you'll see in the executive summary. As far as security, this is another area that's incredibly important, and one of the reasons why you purchase within a gated community. You'll see later, it is actually one of the reasons why you purchased within Moss Creek. But your security guards are your brand, right? They're your first interaction with club staff and personnel. And so it's important that they have that excellent customer service, which you can see 97% satisfaction with that. The personal image, greeting upon arrival, all that stuff, right? That's the first instance where people interact with someone there. So, and then other things that came into that were just the speed and traffic control. So whether that's having someone monitor the streets more often, or putting up blinky lights that tell you your speed, or speed bumps, things like that. So those are the things that came out of security and safety, was just being more cognizant of your speed while driving through the community. So overall club leadership, on the left, you're looking at the management. On the right, you're looking at the board of directors. It's pretty typical to see scores that are a little lower, especially with the board of directors or governors. One of the reasons being, often there's about 20% or so that just aren't familiar with what the board is doing. So they usually select that, neither agree nor disagree, just because they're unaware, or maybe they're new residents within the community. So they're just not familiar with that. But you can see here, when we look at this, these are some scores that are over what we have for our industry benchmark. So the overall club leadership, the management team and professional staff, 81% satisfied. That is a good score. Responsiveness to comments and suggestions, that's something we'll talk about, and an area of opportunity going forward. Communities well run, 78%. From the comments, 2 things that came out on a positive note. Thank you for creating a safe environment for us during COVID. People felt comfortable. People were excited to be there. It was their safety net to be within the community walls. So that was something that came out. And also in the board, it's a thankless volunteer job. So there were people that said, thank you for what you're doing and trying to make Moss Creek always a better place. You'll see, this is one step in creating that data decisions, and we're going to start doing it on an annual basis. So, we're hopefully making decisions based off of all your perspective. Some of the areas of opportunity that came from this was just responsiveness to comments and suggestions on both parties. Either whether that's creating some policy that by 5 business days, you will receive at least a response saying we're looking into it. And then you'll receive a response of what we were able to come from that, whether we can actually do something or we can't. And so that was something that came out of it, being more responsive to listening to comments and making sure that we are getting back to them. And COVID, I think, maybe put a wrench in it, and also other things that were in play. But that is something that they are cognizant of, both parties, and that's something that they are planning to work on going forward. So on the left, what were the primary reasons what attracted you to Moss Creek? And on the right, what are the primary reasons that continuously keeps you at Moss Creek? So location being so important, again, that's along the river, it's so beautiful down there. You'll see natural setting, and we asked you what you liked best, and that was the number one thing. The golf facilities, people love both courses. You have 2 courses that fit the capacity of the number of properties within that, so you're not overwhelmed with pace of play, which we saw. Security, again, one of the highest rated scores within the survey were that security, and that's, that comfortable oasis that it creates to be there. The financial stability, which goes back to, or the sustainability going forward, Moss Creek creating programs or creating models and making sure that we are maintaining and creating a sustainable environment going forward. The pool facilities, 80% of you are using that, right? So these are all things looking at the main reasons what attract you to it. But then we look at what's keeping you here. It's that financial stability, again, creating a sustainable path for all of you going forward. Natural setting, it's the landscaping that we're hitting the mark on. Security, the due structure, I believe, is partially due to the activity fee. Not often do you see that kind of a la carte giving you the ability to do that. So a lot of you cherish that ability to have that due structure, the golf facilities and things like that. So these are things that we're looking at that from a marketing standpoint, what's attracting you there to Moss Creek, and then also what's keeping you there, so we know we can exploit that essentially and use that going forward. What are your top 3 suggestions for improving Moss Creek and the experience? So this was at the end of the survey. This is one of those qualitative open-ended text box comments. We received 714 comments alone just in this one question. What I do, and I have read all the comments, I apply what's called either a tag or a topic to each comment, and there could be multiple in it. That way I can actually quantify and start to see what are the themes coming out of these comments. Because if we're going to ask you to provide these very thoughtful and honest feedback, we need to make sure we're using them and there's value to it. So when we look at it, the biggest thing that came out of this was 33% of the comments referenced improving the clubhouse. So that's the aesthetics, that's creating a bar scene that you can come to watch a game, that you can pop in. That ease of access bar scene is also important for singles, because it's also uncomfortable sometimes for a single to join or to kind of stop at the club and hopefully dine with someone when you already have those reservations. So, having that bar scene is important for a younger, more social aspects, the singles, and just creating that overall attachment and community programming that you can. Improve food and beverage, that was a mix of both the clubhouse, so improving the service at the clubhouse with the menu variety, expanding the outdoor dining, as well as Mackey's Creek, again, expanding Mackey's Creek. They want more, or you want more. You want to be down there. I bet it's not nice up here in Boston right now, but it's probably a beautiful evening down there, and you could be taking this outside and watching this outside down there, watching the sunset. So those are the things that came out of the improved food and beverage. Fees and costs, just being cognizant of that and maintaining that going forward, but recognizing that any sustainable business does have to increase fees on an annual basis. Social programming, we know that's that attachment, right? So coming out of COVID, creating block parties, shutting down a street and creating block parties with your neighbors. People want to be together and creating those casual events. We asked some questions on, what would entice you to come to more events? And we know it's the casual hors d'oeuvre, the beer tastings, the wine tastings, things like that. So making sure when restrictions are reduced, we can create that environment for you to be able to come by. The golf course we already talked about. We know that we're already doing proactive things on, and essentially we've referenced things along all these different areas going forward. And then what do you like best about Moss Creek? We received just under 800 comments, again, just for this one question out of the almost 5,000 comments that we received. Referenced multiple times throughout this presentation, the natural beauty of the community, the members in the community, right? You all talk about cohorts, your neighbors, your friends. You look forward to being at Moss Creek and being able to socialize. And again, all of this goes back to, and sorry, I just keep repeating it, but it's that social programming. It's creating environments for you all to be able to have that ease of access to stop by, to come back from Hilton Head if you choose to dine off property and have a drink and be able to enjoy seeing each other and just popping in. So, I heard warmth, or I read warmth a lot. I read congenial, like just friendly people. It sounds like it's such a nice community to live within. And I'm sure it's just lovely to walk down some of your nature paths and walks to be able to see each other. So all that, that's driving that overall satisfaction with Moss Creek, and make sure we expand upon it. The location, safety and security, golf, and things like that. So again, these are themes that we've seen throughout the presentation. And if you can remember, going back to that importance versus satisfaction, the things that, and if I go back, right, it's the things that go back to, it's that food and beverage, it's that clubhouse renovation. Those are things that we saw out of the fitness center. So those are some things, again, just to intertwine and kind of and weave together all the things that are coming out of your 1,100 responses. And then lastly, so this is called a word cloud. This is taken from that question that we just did. So from those 800 comments that we were just looking at, what it does is it takes the most used words and makes them the biggest and boldest. So it, again, pulls out those themes. So things that we start, right? The nature, the natural beauty of the community. You see friendly, that's that friendly atmosphere. Golf, neighbor, that sense of warmth, community. These are awesome words that are really defining you all. Friends, the facility, the feelings you have when you cross over that gate. So, service staff and the staff within the community. So we love looking at this because this just really speaks volume about, the overarching words of how you define what you like best about Moss Creek.
All right, thank you, Mike. I'm Susanna Johnston, and it's exciting for us to have our first set of results from the new format of the Member Satisfaction Survey. As Jody noted, the survey will repeat it each year so that we'll be able to have a yearly scorecard of the membership satisfaction. This is a great tool for us as management to use to assist us in areas that we see that will need attention and or improving. I'm pleased that the overall satisfaction level is over 90% and that our staff ratings are high, but we know that there are always areas that we can improve. Many of you may wonder how we will process all the comments. I have read through them twice, and yes, there were 4,846 of them. Our job as a management team is to use the comments to get a pulse of how each of the areas reviewed are performing and to find areas that need addressing along with areas that we can give kudos or compliments on our staff. Comments in each section are from the extreme of satisfaction to the extreme of unsatisfaction, with the majority in the middle. For a simple example, I'm going to use the term jeans at the clubhouse. There are comments that will cross each other out like, thanks for changing the dress code to allow jeans in the clubhouse at all times, to a comment that says no jeans should be allowed in the clubhouse. While the majority of comments on the issue are in the middle, asking for a more casual dining atmosphere to go with the casual dress code. There are also a few comments that were like, why are jeans not allowed in the clubhouse? So this shows that we have some work to do. The majority of you want a casual dress code and casual dining opportunity at the clubhouse, and are planning to update the interior of that facility to a more casual dining experience is headed in the right direction. But obviously some additional communication needs to be done now to better inform the membership on the current dress code. As with this scenario, the management team will review all the comments and survey results to see if there are items repeated numerous times that may require action and whether they are operational or capital items. In addition, we will review the individual survey results from each question to assess areas for improvement. Board members are also in the process, as Jenny noted, reviewing the results and comments as well, and we'll be working on looking at necessary short and long-term next steps. I do want to quickly cover several items that were mentioned very frequently in the comments that we're already addressing, prior to receiving the results. These are: the website is not user-friendly. We're in the process of finalizing a member website redesign that will make it easier to find information. I actually got the final link yesterday, so when I get a chance, we're going to start reviewing that and hope to release that very soon. We need additional spin bikes. We have added 4 bikes to our fitness program. I believe those came in March. Updating and renovation of the golf course restrooms. This is already underway as well. The loaner kayaks are in disrepair and need replacing. This item was due, as Mike said, in our reserve fund for this year, and 4 singles have been replaced, and we have 2 new double kayaks still on order, and those are expected mid-May. Put the printed scorecards back on the carts instead of paper scorecards. That was mentioned a lot of times. That was a COVID issue, but I know that the staff has already started doing that, so that's been taken care of. As Mike said, we had a lot of comments about closing the club from 3 to 5 because we want to get a drink after golf. So this also was a COVID issue, and we changed that this week. Communicate to members regarding walkers, bikers on the golf course. This is dangerous and should not be happening. We got a lot of comments about that, and that is something that we're trying to enforce, something that we've been communicating about. You're not allowed on the golf course during golf hours, which are 8 a.m. to dusk. A lot of questions about when is dusk. Well, tonight it's at 8:28, so it's usually 20 to 30 minutes after sunset. We need additional seating at Mackey Creek Grill. The deck is too small. Additional seating area has been added. We're waiting on the fire pit. We have furniture on order. That's a long delivery time due to COVID. We've got some temporary furniture out currently, and I think our staff did a great job on that seating, so I hope you guys will be enjoying that. Pool staff need more training and are not enforcing the rules. We have designated a pool operations manager for the pool deck this summer. He has already updated the training manual for all pool staff and will be supervising and training all of our temporary summer staff. We know that's an important area. As Mike said, it's a heavily used area, and we're going to work really hard to have a better experience for our membership down there this summer. The clubhouse needs updating. As Mike said, there was a lot of comments on that. We feel that the project underway will address a lot of those comments. Some of those were not wanting the grill room closed due to an event, ability to have larger member events, updated decor, and more casual dining. So stay tuned for that. We're working on that plan. And last but not least, members are excited and are looking for the addition of pickleball courts. Frequent items that were mentioned that we've discussed with the management team for immediate action, or reminding all of our staff to wear their name tags. We have a lot of new members. A lot of you don't know our staff. We have some new staff, so that's very important. We have reiterated that with our management team to make sure that is happening. Reminding the security staff of the importance of greeting and welcoming members as they come home. That was repeated a lot in the comments, even though our security staff received very high remarks. It was repeated often that sometimes they're missing the wave, and that's important to people. So we're going to be working on that. Visibility of professional management staff in the amenity areas. With COVID, our team's been keeping pretty much to their individual department areas, trying not to interact as often with members as before. But as more of our staff and members are getting vaccinated, we do understand the need for our management team to be more visible in the community and to the members. I can tell you that they've certainly all been working nonstop during the pandemic, but that is something that we're going to be working on. And then there were items suggested that require some capital outlay that will be discussed with staff and committees as future planning is worked on. Several of those that just come quick to my mind were the suggestion of a restroom at the driving range. Can we add a cool deck layer to the Boston pool deck? That area is very hot on people's feet. Why can't we have the ability for members to pay online? So those are some items that we'll be looking into, but they do require some capital outlay and need to be planned if they move forward. To wrap up, I just thank you again for taking your time to complete the survey and to provide us valuable input to both us as the management team and the board. We take your opinion seriously and we look forward to improving on your member experience based on your feedback. And so now I think we're going to move to the question and answer phase. I had a couple of questions. I had one question that was submitted prior, and I'm gonna pull that up. So I had a question submitted from Dory Barnes at 94 Victoria Drive. Her question was, how much did the survey cost? The survey cost was $8,000. It's in line with other surveys that we've had performed, but I would say that the quality and the depth of information we're getting from the club benchmark service is just far superior. So definitely money well spent that we'll continue budgeting for as well. The second part of her question was, how will the comments be resolved? Will each administrator, manager, board member to who the comments are addressed be responsible for resolving each comment? If so, to who will the proposed resolutions be presented? I think I spoke to how we will be reviewing comments for action. People don't sign their name, so we have no idea. I think out of all 4,846, I guess I like to say that number because I read it a lot, comments, there was only one comment that had someone's name assigned to it. And that was someone that asked a specific question, and I'm going to reach out to them with that answer. But otherwise, you know, we're trying to look at the comments in each section, try to figure out what's most important. What are the majority of the members? What are they saying? How do we listen to that? And if anybody individually has a comment or they have a concern that they want us to reach out, you know, you can just email us. You can email the management team. You can email me. You can email Jenny from the board, and we'll make sure that individually, if there's something that you feel is left outstanding, that we will address that. We did receive another question from Mr. Bauman at 78 Peninsula Drive. It was mostly related to board managing expenses and operations. And I'm going to forward that to the Finance Committee because it's a question really related for finance, the Finance Committee, and not really related to the subject we're talking about today. I'm going to check in. I got a couple of other ones that have come in. I have a question, and this is probably for you, Mike, from Donna Newman. Her question is, the numbers ranging 5 to 7 out of 10 don't seem to match the high satisfaction scores. So do you want to talk about how the range goes into the percentages?
Absolutely. Yep. So there was only, to remind you, there was only one question in the survey that was on a 0 to 10 scale, and that was the Net Promoter Score. And we have to keep that as a 10-point scale to keep it consistent with the research. But the rest of the survey was on a 1 to 7 scale. So any mean scores within those 6s, which you were seeing, are very high in our opinion. So, but that's on a 1 to 7 scale. And so all the amenities, overall satisfaction, things like that were all on a 1 to 7 scale, which is more consistent with those 5s and 6s that you were referencing.
I have a comment here from Mary Moore. Security is the best. I'm amazed that they know people's names and cars. So kudos to the security team. A question from Thomas Kraft. Will electronic payment capability be included in the new website? Mr. Kraft, that's one of the things I noted that we're going to be looking into. It requires a lot of security-ware software, and so that'll be a capital outlay, but certainly something we're looking into. But we do want members to know you can always go on your bank website and have them send us a check. But we understand the ease of being able to get on to the website and pay your bill off there. We had a lot of requests for that. So that was something the accounting team has already been looking into. So I don't know if there's, I don't see any more questions coming through at this point. And so as we stated, we are recording this. This will be placed on the member website tomorrow. Mike will be sending me the finalized, updated executive summary, and we'll get that posted as well. And so we encourage you to, if your neighbors or your friends missed it, have them get on the website, review it. If they have questions, they can certainly send us any questions. And we're going to be continuing with my deep diving into the results further and working with the management team and the board to see how we can do to get our scores up next year and improve your experience. So, Jenny, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Susanna. Not at this point, other than if you all have questions that you did not get a chance to ask, or if you think of things you'd like to ask after this presentation, please feel free to email me or email Susanna. We'll make sure that the right person answers the question. You get an answer. And thank you, all of you, for taking the time to complete the survey. That was an amazing response.
We do have, just because we like compliments, Patrick McNamara just wrote in that this was a really good presentation. So thanks, Pat.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.